Welcome to this week's CTO Studio. We get some major data science downloads from Christopher Keon, runs a local machine learning data science meetup here in San Diego. We get really meta on what data science could mean for us, so you want to listen to this because you want to datascience.com.
I have a wonderful electronic invention I want you to see. It looks something like this.
Welcome to the CTO Studio. I'm your host, Etienne de Bruin. The CTO Studio is where we chat with CTOs building amazing products with incredible teams. Have you chatted with a CTO lately? Chris, Robert, Alex, welcome to the CTO Studio.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah.
Can you tell that it's a CTO studio?
Looks like one.
Yeah. We're missing some like technical diagrams on the walls and the whiteboards, but I love the whiteboards.
Thank you.
I don't think you have enough whiteboards.
We don't have enough
Yeah,
whiteboards.
not enough
Quite
whiteboards.
enough, but otherwise.
And then we also don't have Miss Pac-Man
Right.
Yeah.
We need
and
that.
Galaga.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I can't have everything.
You can't have everything.
No.
So,
but we do have the leader of 7 CTOs here with us,
and yes,
which is a good thing.
that is a good thing. Thank you, Alex. Okay, so Chris, welcome to the CTO Studio. You're heading up a machine learning data science groups in San Diego. We'll get into that.
Mm-hmm.
Robert's the CTO of ByProxy. You'll tell us about that. Alex is the chief architect at Intuit, and you don't have to tell us anything about that. So, Chris, tell us about machine learning and data science, and what are you doing in your groups to help that happen?
Yeah, so I started San Diego Machine Learning Group about a year ago. So I was coming out of grad school here, and I decided I didn't want to personally go into a career in data science, but I did still want to be involved in it. And I know a lot of things are going on in terms of the business aspect here in San Diego. They're really trying to grow the industry. And this was one way that I thought I could really sort of bring people in from the community into an environment where we can work on data science together. And for people who are newer to the area and just don't have the background, they can get some experience practicing from people who know more. And then for the people who are more advanced, they can really work together and hone their skills.
I love that because just like the buzzword central, it's kind of demystifying what that specific discipline really is for the common person, right? The common computer scientist / entrepreneur, right?
Right.
So what is data science?
Good question. There's a lot of answers to that, right?
Yeah. For me, from sort of the data scientist perspective, data science is really getting insight into your data, right? So what is your data telling you? What story do I have that I can take out of my data? And so in the context of business or something, what story you're pursuing is really driven by your business questions, your business objectives. Mm-hmm. If it's how you can understand your customer better, understand their behavior better, or increase profits, for example, those are all things that data science can really do to put together a story so that way you can change your actions accordingly.
I do feel like as a CTO, I'm not doing enough around data. I feel like it's a paradigm shift I have to go through to always be asking myself, oh wait, it's not about the business logic or the feature or the audience. It's about all this data that I could be asking for or could be mining to leverage whatever it is I'm doing.
Yeah, and all the things you don't even know that you're not even thinking about yet. So we were having a conversation in the hall already, and just thinking about, I need to hire a data scientist, so I have somebody who's looking at this and figuring out new insights for our stuff that we haven't considered yet. I mean, sometimes you don't even know the question that you need to ask.
So what does ByProxy do?
So ByProxy is a end-to-end transaction platform for commercial real estate. So we're provide tools for the middle market real estate broker, commercial real estate broker, which is like 75 to 80% of the market. We basically just help them run a professional transaction online like you would from a broker at someone like CBRE, one of the big firms. And in about a month, we'll be releasing basically Zillow-esque data for 32 million commercial real estate assets in the United States. So the only company that has that data, and we'll be putting it out there basically.
Wow.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy.
Wow, that's exciting.
Now, does Intuit have any data?
We have a little bit of data, around, I don't know, accounting, taxes, personal finances. Yeah, a little bit.
I still
little
don't
bit.
know if you guys are tackling the right problems. It feels.
Do you think we're going to make it as a company?
I don't know. The
Jury's
product
still out.
market fit,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, jury's still out.
I'm just saying, don't be too confident, is what I'm asking.
Okay,
Just
that's good feedback.
Be humble and just.
That's good feedback. So, Chris, I'm really intrigued by this, the machine learning group that you put together. And I'm curious what the attendees look like. And I asked that question in the context of, I'll talk to younger engineers at Intuit, and I'll tell them, 20 years ago when I started at Intuit, there were makefile engineers. Like the only job was working on makefiles.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And so now we talk about full stack engineer, and full stack engineer is about front end, back end, DevOps, owning your own quality. But more and more what we're seeing is that full stack is starting to include data and data science as well. And it doesn't mean we don't hire data scientists, but the role of the engineer is really transforming in the age where data science is becoming more and more real. So I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on that, and then second, what kind of people actually attend your group?
Yeah, so in terms of the pipeline, I feel like there are so many aspects to the data science pipeline from start to finish. Some of them are more engineering sort of questions, and that's where a lot of your traditional computer scientists come in. They like those sort of black and white problems and stuff. They're munging data. They have some pipeline. They need to get data from point A to point B. But then the part that's really novel is the real insight into the data and just sort of this exploratory process, which is like I said, the novel part, and that's where these data scientists are popping up. And it's also the popular part right now too, right? That's the sexy area to be in. And so a lot of people kind of from the outside that maybe are in that data engineering pipeline are kind of like, oh, I want to get my hands in this other part of the pipeline. And so we get a lot of people who are probably in their 30s who had advanced degrees from undergrad, but the career just didn't exist when they came out. And so they're really sort of looking to equip themselves with those additional nuggets that are needed to really go into this career and understand it well and to make good use of the data. So it's really something that they learned from practice. So we basically practice on a bunch of different data sets and see how well we can make predictions about those data sets. And through that experience, it's really something that you can only learn through experience. It's not something that is something that you can just read in a textbook. You really have to do it over and over because every situation is different. And so by going through that every week and stuff, we really kind of develop those skills.
What are some of the data sets you've been looking at and experimenting with so far?
Yeah, so the primary platform that we use for data exploration and stuff is called Kaggle. So Kaggle is a company that was created sort of independent of Google, but I think Google purchased them not too long ago. And so they set up these contests. And so, for example, the contest that we're focused on now is you're trying to determine whether a comment, I think it's on Quora or some other site, is toxic or not. And if so, is it racist? Is it sexist? What kind of toxicness is it? And so there's a lot of aspects to that. First, how do you turn a comment into numbers? Because you can't really do math on words. And so that's the first step. And then how do you once you have those turned into numbers, then how can you actually make some sort of prediction as to whether it's toxic or not? Know that you're making a good prediction. How do you explain that in the end, right? You have a model that works really well, but how do I explain that to someone? What is it picking up on? Because one of the challenges with these sort of black box models is that you really can't understand what their reasoning is. And for example, if you're an insurance company and you want to reject or accept someone for an insurance policy, you'd like to give them an explanation as to why we rejected you for the policy, right? And so really being able to interpret your models and understand that is another important aspect.
And so are these done, so these Kaggles, is a Kaggle a challenge like that, or is this a company?
Yeah, so Kaggle is the name of the company,
Okay.
and they have different competitions on there. And so the one that we're working on now is the one that's focused on classifying whether a comment is toxic or not. Before, we've worked on other ones. The last one was very cute, literally, because we're dealing with animal pictures and trying to predict when an animal was going to get adopted. So we had photos of the animals, we had a little bit of descriptions and different aspects, and we were trying to predict how long it would take to adopt them. And clearly, the older animals had a much harder time getting adopted, and the data showed that. And so people, from a business perspective, it's like, okay, how can I make my animals more attractive to people coming in and get them to be adopted or something? So there's a lot of insight.
One thing you can do there is you can put up a photo of a young puppy But when it's actually
We're
a
doing
dog.
catfish. We're doing catfishing with adoption there. Is what's going on? Come in, you're like, wait, this is like 10 years old. I can't get this dog. Too funny.
I love
That's
it.
cool.
So are these done every week?
Yeah, every week we meet for 4 hours.
That's a commitment, man.
Yeah, it's quite a
Holy
commitment.
mollies.
Yeah,
You
it's
guys
great.
serve? Do you have snacks?
Yeah, we usually bring in some snacks, order some tacos.
Is it
or
after
something.
hours?
It's from 12 to 4 on Saturdays. So
Oh my
we
goodness,
spend our
weekends.
weekends doing it.
That's
So-
a real
Commitment.
So I
It's a
want to
commitment.
ask again what Alex asked. Like, who is showing up to these things? Is it entrepreneurs?
We've had some entrepreneurs, some people. So my real motivation, because I'm very entrepreneurial focused, I wanted to get data scientists together, sharing ideas and exchanging information, so that way, hopefully, this would help sort of spawn some business ideas and startups in San Diego. That was my real motivation. We get a lot of people showing up that are in maybe more of an engineering job. They studied computer science and they're looking to shift more into data science. They see that opportunity growing in their company, right? These positions that didn't exist before are now there, and they would like to move in that direction. So those are a lot of people that we get. Some people are kind of what I would consider like the hacker types, where they just really enjoy playing with data, and they do that on the side for fun.
Have you had any just like complete novices, people coming from outside of tech as a whole, who just are fascinated by this and want to get involved?
Yeah, definitely. Say not too many people. Everyone that comes is pretty much interested in getting their fingers wet in the data. Not too many people from just sort of the business side of things that are just wanting to learn about it. We haven't had too much of that, because I think, I mean, you can imagine it's not the most exciting party and stuff that we have every weekend, where a lot of us are sitting there on our laptops kind of geeking out on the data and stuff. And so if you're not doing that, then it's kind of boring for you.
Are you doing? You're doing it with Shane up in the sandbox, right?
Yeah, they let us
okay.
use that space. So,
And
yeah.
is it? Have I heard correctly that San Diego is trying to position itself as sort of a data sciencey startup ecosystem, or did I?
I have heard rumors of that. There are some people talking about it for sure.
If they talk about it enough, maybe it'll happen.
Right.
Or maybe they'll talk to Chris and
Yeah,
he'll
and
get
then it'll
people
really
together
happen.
to
Yeah,
create the
exactly.
ecosystem. Have you seen anything come out of it? I mean, it's pretty young, right?
Yeah, it's still pretty young. Like I said, it's just, we started it a year ago. There's definitely, I'm working on my own company related to data science right now, sort of independent of that
Just
group.
the one with the axes, right? When you-
Yes, exactly. So how can you more accurately throw axes? So yeah, but I definitely know. So coming from UCSD and the cognitive science department there, that's really where that data science institute that they just created is at. So I was definitely involved in that. I was teaching data science there last quarter. So there's a ton of students coming out with this, or they're just starting to come out of college with this knowledge. And so the question is the industry going to be there for them to stay in San Diego and get these jobs that they're hoping for, or do they have to move to, for example, the Bay Area, like a lot of startups do to get these jobs? And so it's sort of a two-pronged solution, where you're trying to create the talent coming out, so the business has the talent, but then you're trying to create the business side of things as well. And so I've definitely seen a lot of the talent come out. So I'm still less familiar with the business side of things, but hopefully it's working. I know there are a lot of people trying to make it happen.
I feel like there's a lot of people looking for that role right now.
Yeah.
You know?
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's such a chicken and egg problem, right? In that you have to have the roles for the students to want to learn it, but then you have to have the talent that is actually learning it in order for the roles to exist. I actually had a friend of mine send me a text over the weekend that there was a high school senior who was accepted into UCSD for cognitive science or UC Santa Cruz for computer science, and which path should he go down? Like, he didn't even understand what the difference was. Right, so I was explaining the difference to him and telling him about how we're going more towards data, and really it's kind of a hybrid role between a computer scientist and a data scientist. And in the end, he chose the UCSD cognitive science. But one thing I'd love to hear you talk about is, it's great that you've got these specific examples. I think when many people hear about data science, they think about what they see. They think about it as like a Google data science, which is the problem that Google is solving is a completely different problem than what everybody else is solving, right? They're trying to solve data science end to end as a platform. But data science is very personal. It's very local. It's very domain specific. And so you pick some very domain specific problems. I'm sure, Robert, you were talking about data science and wanting to grow there as well, that in almost any space, if you really understand the domain and realize there's human expertise in that domain, then you can use data science to actually glean insight that maybe would normally take a human many, many hours to do, a very educated and experienced human. So have you seen that in the meetups that you've been putting together, that people are really understanding that data science is very much a local and personal thing to a given domain?
Yes, I definitely think that's the case. It's at this point, I think Google, like you said, is trying to really automate this data science process, but we're still very much in the human must do everything. The machines aren't smart enough right now, right? So, I've definitely seen this come up a lot.
Have you had people that have had almost like a surprise reaction, that they came in and they thought data science was this big thing, and then suddenly through the examples you've provided, they realize it's a local thing and that you can do data science almost anywhere. You could do data science in terms of having pets be adopted, or commercial real estate being sold, or delivering an amazing personalized tax prep experience, that it basically every given domain has some role of data science. Is it like people are surprised when they show up and they learn this?
I think the people that are generally coming to the data science thing that are wanting to be data scientists are very sort of familiar with that aspect, and that you can get any insight out of data. I think the disconnect often comes from more the business side, where they don't realize how rich a very simple data set can be, how much information you can extract, right? One of the things that I really emphasized to my students last quarter is that, okay, so this is the question. Say you have some question that you want to answer. You're never going to have the perfect data set. So how can you best answer that given the data that you have? And so business people have lots of questions. They'd love to get a better understanding of their customers. Given the data that you have, how can I get that information and stuff? And that, all these different niche data sets, you can have kind of information about how people are moving through your website, web logs and stuff, just to gather any information about your customers. You can get really deep insight out of those things. And that's where a really talented data scientist can take something that seems disconnected and really put a story together and connect it to the question that the business has.
And is that part of what you try to teach as well? Like, how do you go back to your business folks and actually tell the story of what data science can do?
Yeah, so that's definitely like kind of a challenge sometimes, because every case is different, right? And so that's where a lot of experience comes in, and people, the more they do data science, the more they see the potential and the insight. And a lot of it is just pure stubbornness and grit to try to okay, I have to make this work. How can I do this, right? So definitely see that quite a bit. Say in terms of the communication of it back to the executive team and stuff, it can be what I found in my experience is that really good data scientists don't tend to be as decisive. They tend to sort of let the data speak for itself, and so they can give sort of very open-ended narrative about what the data is saying and stuff, and then business people can use that to sort of make decisions, because the data can be very vague about things as well. So because you're not really doing science where you're going off and doing hypothesis-driven things. This is very data-driven, and so without controlled experiments, you can't really be certain, but you can get some patterns out of it.
So I'm curious, Robert, what in your business, where do you see? So you said that you're looking to hire some data scientists and really go, deep in this area. So where are you looking to accelerate your business?
I mean, there's all kinds of things that are interesting to us. It would be great to know, given any commercial asset that comes on the market, if we could predict when that might sell, who that might sell to, what that buyer looks like, what are the attributes of that based on other data. For us, I think it's really looking forward, kind of predicting. But also then finding ways that we can find insights and create revenue off of this. So
that's like the machine learning component,
Yeah.
right? The predictive analytics.
Yeah. Because a big part of our product, like what we really do, is help help the smaller broker find a buyer for his asset. A lot of times, if you're local to San Diego, right, you might have a building that's for sale. You might know, 20 or 30 potential buyers for that, and you kind of reach out to your Rolodex. But there's buyers nationwide that you probably don't have any idea who they are, how to reach them. And so we really provide that to the broker. But if we can find better ways to narrow that in, and it's almost like lead scoring, and almost give them just like the perfect person. Hey, we know a guy down in Florida who's going to buy this building, and we can almost guarantee that this is who wants it. And we have predictive analysis to say why. That's kind of holy grail for us.
So is there can you give us a bit of a rundown on the tooling or the tool sets? Like what at the weekly thing with Kaggle, maybe if you speak to a CTO type who hasn't considered any of this yet, like what's some of the tooling that, even if that you guys are using, that we could potentially find valuable for our ventures?
Yeah. So most data scientists, unless you're maybe in an industry setting where you have a larger budget to buy sophisticated tools, most data scientists really work with just Python, the programming language, right? There's not much more than you need than a few Python libraries. So that's
I
one
was
of the great things
convinced
about
you
it.
were going to say Google Spreadsheets.
Oh no. Yeah, say pandas data frames are our Google spreadsheets. So, so yeah, I think the tools are all really accessible and stuff. And for the business person, it's just really about here's the data set that we have. Here's some general business questions that we have. What can you figure out, right? Just being very open-ended and letting them explore is a good way. And then the tools they already have at their fingertips. So it's all about, communicating visualizations and putting everything back together in a presentation, which doesn't require any sophisticated tools. So,
And then have any of you worked with TensorFlow and?
Yeah, I was going to ask about that, like TensorFlow, Spark, Hadoop, those kind of things. I mean, is that involved really in pieces that you look at?
Yeah. I mean, we basically still write all the code in Python. They're just kind of Python libraries and stuff. So, I mean, one of the things that people who are a little more excited about it are have GPUs, graphical computing units, on their car or on their computers and stuff. So that way you can get more sophisticated computing power. Because if you're just running it on your laptop, some of the more sophisticated models you can't really run in a timely manner. So that's a hardware component that's there. But otherwise, the beauty of things like TensorFlow and Keras is another library for machine learning is that they're all open and available, and this has really democratized things. And I went to it almost makes it too easy to do data science because I went to a competition one time. It was a hackathon with about 200 people, and the goal was to determine what digit was in an image. And there were people that were getting it 100% correctly, and they put them on stage and say, "Well, how is it working?" And they're like, I don't know. So it's so
the
data
library and there.
Yeah, exactly. So data science has gotten to the point where these tools that have democratized it have also sort of abstracted away the details, and so it's enough to people that don't really know too much about what's going on in the back end of things can really be dangerous.
Data science script kiddies.
Yeah. Hey, Etienne, just real quick on that question that you asked, I think that for any of the CTOs out there that are asking themselves the question, am I a data company? The answer is, if you collect a single piece of data from your customer, you're a data company.
Yeah.
And if you're not thinking about labeling your data and organizing your data on day one, it's too late. And that if you ever want to get to the point, and you do, where you want to do data science on your data, it's never too early to organize your data. It's never too early to label your data. And you won't know what insights you can actually glean until you have well-labeled, well-documented, organized data available to data scientists, and then you'll derive amazing insights out of that. And you could build entire businesses, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just think about the fact that there's 3 major companies out there that have built an entire company on a credit score, on a number, right? These are multi-billion-dollar companies on a single number. And so that they've been able to innovate in that space largely because the data has been disorganized. They were able to organize the data and generate the score.
Yep.
So if you want to own that problem yourself for the business that you're in, it's never too early to think about clean data, well-labeled data.
Doesn't that drive, so specifically in your case, doesn't it drive you dotty that what are you not seeing that you don't know that you're not seeing in on this mountains of data that you have? Or is that where you hire the data scientist and say, I'll see you in a couple months?
No. I mean, I look at it as it's just amazing opportunity. It's amazing opportunity. And the way that we think about it is that if you're affluent, you hire a personal financial planner, a human being, and they have 20, 30 years experience, and they will make decisions for you based on your data. What does everybody else do? Right? The data is there. It's in the financial data. It's in your bank transactions. It's in your accounting transactions. And like with QuickBooks Capital is a new product. We released it like about a year ago. And so we will lend money, microloans, to small businesses with zero credit. Well, how can we do that? Well, we see their bank transactions because they import their data. We see their accounting transactions. And we have generated models that allow us to predict risk better than the banks can do it. Right? And so now we're delivering loans at a time to small businesses when it's the most important for them to grow early, when they're a 2-3 person small business, right? And so We just look at it as opportunity. For us, it's a matter of prioritization, and certainly we look at scale. Like, how do you scale? You have to make decisions about what parts of your organization do you scale. Do you hire more software engineers and build more product? Do you hire more data scientists and actually derive more insight? And they end up feeding each other, right? The more services you build and the more data you collect, the more you can actually deliver data science, the more insights you get, the better services you can build more product, and it's just like this virtuous
It just creates a
cycle.
flywheel.
Yeah, it's this flywheel effect. And so it's just amazing opportunity. And so do we wish that we could go faster? Absolutely. I mean, we look at every single aspect of every Intuit product today and say that should be 100% automated. 100%. You should just be able to talk to it. Say, hey, how's my cash flow today? And it gives you the answer. Hey, run payroll for me, and it just runs payroll for you.
Can you ask it to whisper so that no one else can hear? Or you can just
Text
say,
me this
"Etienne,
information,
I don't
please."
think you want me
yeah.
to tell you.
That's right. Whisper in my ear my cash flow.
That's funny.
I wonder what, if you think about how we all went from our own bare metal servers to then, going into the managed servers, then going into the cloud. I wonder what this progression of data is, because we're all collecting our own data and we're all trying to derive and answer these questions from these siloed data.
Yeah.
With SSO, they're trying to break into, well, you can log in once and be available everywhere. But what are we all just building these massive buckets in the sky of our own data? And at what point does that all become sort of federated or sort of are we headed there, or are we all collecting the same data and trying to add value in different ways? I mean, what's happening?
I would guess there's a huge, duplicate cross section of all this stuff.
Huge.
Right?
I probably.
But yeah, but everybody's sort of unique because we might have 8 data points or something that are shared with yours, but then I append all this other stuff that's completely different. So as a whole, it's a unique data set. But yeah, there's got to be tons of duplication out there. It's crazy.
There may be a business opportunity.
Yeah, it's interesting that I view this because it's becoming more and more regulated, right, with CCPA and GDPR in Europe. So it's becoming a much more regulated space. And I think what's going to happen is the same way that PCI in the payment industry, where Visa, MasterCard, and American Express all said, hey, listen, if you want to be a payment processor, you got to abide by all these rules. Abiding by all these rules is difficult and expensive. So what did that do? It created a business opportunity for some people to be payments platforms, right? So will this create an opportunity to have data platforms, data science platforms, data aggregation and cleansing platforms, because doing it right in compliant ways that won't get you penalized by governments around the world, is that a huge business opportunity? It is.
Well, I mean, going a bit meta on that, do we have the right to screw up the conclusions we're making from people's data? I mean,
yeah, I mean, one of the things that makes the business people the most uneasy as it relates to data science is this probabilistic or is this deterministic? And in most cases, in almost every case, it's probabilistic. So at what point does a probabilistic conclusion worthy of exposing it to the customer, right? If we can predict, so we predict today at over greater than 99% accuracy whether you should be an itemized filer or take the standard deduction based on like 21 pieces of information that shouldn't actually predict that, right, through machine learning.
Interesting.
And so what do? We expose that to the customer. We say, we think that you should be an itemized filer. But then we make it very, very clear.
And you kind of caveat that, though?
We do.
think
We
so,
have
but
to, right? It's compliance, so we have to caveat it. But there are many places where we'll make predictions. And honestly, we're still learning what is the right way to expose to our customers the fact that we're in a probabilistic world.
Yeah.
And we're used to being very deterministic about these things. And it's probabilistic. There's a high degree of certainty in this, but it's not 100%. Yeah, I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a challenge, and it depends on kind of the domain. For example, if you're dealing with ads and it's an ad that's not relevant, we're trying to maximize the probability that someone's going to click on an ad when we show it to them. But if it's not relevant, we've learned to sort of ignore those things. So if it's something a little more personal that suggests something about the customer, it's you have to mask it or present it in a very specific way. So. Yeah.
So when should I be saying as a CTO, I need a data scientist? Robert, that's
What, yesterday?
Uh,
Last week? I don't know.
Alex, I'm assuming you guys have a small army of data scientists.
Yeah, we have a couple.
Okay, and Chris is helping people who wanted to do that become that. So what am I as a CTO? When am I starting to say, okay, you know, I have 15, 20 people. We have a nice little run rate. Am I supposed to? I mean, do I have to be the person that thinks, well, this is how we can leverage our data, or is it really so far beyond common sense that you need a data scientist?
One of the types of people that we have come to our group a lot are individuals who work at these smaller companies who are getting a data scientist to have a data scientist. But almost all of these employees are not doing data science, which is one of the reasons why they come to our group, because they can actually like do data science there. They're not doing it at their job, they're doing other things, a lot of more computer science related stuff. So I feel like a lot of it has to come from the executive team. If you have a data set, like you said earlier, if you have data, then there's potential information in there, and it may be relevant to your business model, or it may be sort of tangential and something where you can use to grow your business. And giving data scientists access to that, even though you may not fully understand it, giving them access to that and letting them explore, and then listening to the insights and being open-minded about that is a potential room for growth and making your business better. And so I think that's the way to sort of scale up from having no data scientists to one is believing that the data can tell you something, and then being open-minded when you have a data analyst that can sort of tell you what that story is.
So is a good way to go about it then to say, I don't know if this, I don't know what this matrix is telling me. Hey, lay person or data enthusiast or analyst, come and take a look and tell me what you see. Is it like shaking the bones? I mean, what help me?
Yeah.
What are you looking for, Robert?
Like I said, for us, I want somebody to come in and do some of that. To say, hey, here's this playground. Here's all this data we have. Go.
This is
muck
how you're
around
not
and
leveraging it. This is how
Right.
you.
Give me some suggestions. But beyond that, for us, it's the predictive stuff.
Yeah.
So we know some of the things we want to
So
start
are you
with.
expecting that person to be able to know the tooling and run the deployments and run the experiments and the testing? And is that who this person is?
I guess it depends. For us, I would like someone who's got experience, who's kind of done this before, and can come in with that knowledge and teach me too, right? But I think it depends on the organization you are, and I'm sure you guys can bring in lots of people and they can learn on the job. Whereas for somebody like me as a small organization, we want somebody who's kind of been there, done that. I think.
Yeah, and I think that depending on how deep you go into the data, the skill sets start to diverge in terms of you get PhDs in math who are extremely good at data science, and they're good at picking algorithms, and they're good at training models and so on and so forth, but they're not software people.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't know how to build and deploy and scale and make things highly available and all of that. And so depending on where you are in your organization, you could hire some kind of hybrid between those roles. But I think that the deeper the insight that you want, the deeper the uniqueness that you want, the more you're going to find, I think, the need to find specialized people to do these things. But one thing to kind of go back on is that before Chris talked about the way that they did their the meetups, that there was a specific goal, and then they used the goal to drive teaching, right? And in my experience at Intuit, certainly you want your data scientist to sometimes work on, hey, here's a big data set, is there something in here? But generally when you pair them with a product person that has, boy, I just wish we could do this. I wish we could predict whether somebody is an itemized filer or takes a standard deduction. Because what did we notice? We noticed that if somebody went through the pain of itemizing their deductions, and at the end they realized that the standard deduction gave them a higher one, what did they do? They got so pissed they left. So we said, wouldn't it be great if we could predict this? Now we can.
Yep.
Right? So sometimes there's specific moments, these moments of truth, where you know what you want, and you ask the data scientist, it's almost like the reverse of the question. I want this. What data is required for you to generate this insight for me? As opposed to, I have this data. What insights can you generate for me?
Which is what you meant with, like, what are the questions, right?
Yeah, to help the data scientists, because you know they're not often business-minded people, right? So to help them understand the business questions, so that way it gives them some sort of guidance, and to also say like, this is the question that I have. How can I answer this with the data that I have instead of what data set do you need? I think can even be more of a better way of doing that, because if you have to go off and collect a completely independent data set, then that's almost like a separate business or something, right? So it's better, given all the data that you have, how can I sort of grow in that direction, because you already have that information, because as you guys know, it takes a long time to collect data and curate it and everything, so it becomes almost a sort of another side.
It's almost like we would like to make more money. How can we do that? I mean, that's a fair question.
I think it has to be a little more specific than that.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
I think the other part that I struggle with this age of the data scientist is you don't call software people computer scientists. We
true.
need 4 computer scientists. No, we need 4 full stack engineers.
Right.
And we'd love for them to have done computer science in some cases, other cases not. Isn't there a more accessible term for the data scientist? It doesn't feel like I'm talking to Gandalf.
I think data science term right now is very sexy, and people like carrying that term around. So I think it's a buzzword. Maybe sometime down the line that will change. And
Maybe I'll call myself a computer scientist.
You should.
Why not?
There's no downside.
I'll start introducing you that way from
That's
now on.
right.
This is Etienne,
Meet
the
my
computer
computer
scientist.
scientist.
My computer scientist,
Right.
yeah. It's interesting too, because you get kids who go to school for computer science and they get a job as a software engineer. And then you get students who get a degree in math and then an advanced degree in math, and they're mathematicians, and they take a job as a data scientist.
Yeah.
And so there's almost no connection between the titling as it exists in the academic world versus how it actually manifests itself. And even in software engineering, you see universities now actually having degrees in software engineering as opposed to computer science, right? Because what do you learn in computer science? You learn a lot of theory, right? You learn compiler theory and hardware and digital electronics and da-da-da-da. Many things that will absolutely not make you a better software engineer. Right? At this
I
point,
don't know,
most
Alex.
people don't need to know how a compiler works.
Really?
Well, but you're
All those years I wrote my own compiler.
but you're a computer scientist.
Right, that's correct. Exactly. Good point.
So for
Good
you,
point. You need to know.
Personally, I need to know.
you need to know.
I need.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think. What are the other terms being used? Data engineer,
Yeah.
I've heard.
Data
Is that
engineer.
an engineer who does data?
I think that's a different sort of aspect of the pipeline, though. So they're all sort of encompassed in this larger pipeline of data in and some sort of insight information out, right? And so there are different steps in the process, and that's more of I feel like the modern reinvention of the computer scientist. If you're not functioning as a developer, you're sort of writing scripts to munge data. Data munging is kind of the term, and the data science part is the newer aspect.
Something I always wonder about is, because we've been talking about data sets a lot, and I think actually at the previous 7 CTOs conference we did an exercise around kind of machine learning and AI and what data might you have that you could use. And I remember a lot of people coming to the conclusion that, I don't have a large enough data set. We only have this for 10,000 customers or something, and that's not big enough. At what level, do you have to have, like how much data do you have to have before you can really do the machine learning stuff, and pull out these insights?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the specifics of the data set, but just having, say, 10,000 records or something may be enough to get general sort of insight, to start getting insight from your customers and the data set itself. It depends really on the complexity of the problem. If you want to predict something complicated, then you need more data to do that. If you want to predict something that's a relatively robust relationship, then it doesn't require as much data to do so.
The image I have in my head is that whiteboard where you're scribbling everything, and and then we're gonna do this and the formula that, and then there's like oh shit, but there's this one thing we didn't capture that negates this whole freaking artistic work on the whiteboard. Then what do you do?
Start collecting it. So
You get in your time machine.
I know you registered as a user of my app, but we need you to re-register because we forgot to ask you your birth date.
Yeah.
Well,
Or which birth date you identify with.
I guess you just go collect it though, right? I mean, you could, if for an example like that, you can go back and
Or you go buy it.
right? Or
Yeah.
you can go to somebody else and append that piece of data that's missing, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, you go with the level of prediction that you can at this time, and if you can infer that information through some other data that may sort of speak to that same aspect, then you use that as well. And like I said, you're never going to have the perfect data set, so a crafty, really good data scientist is going to use the tools that they have in front of them and get that insight.
Yeah, but you bring in a really interesting point, because when you're thinking about building product with software, if you're missing data, you don't even think a second time about, am I going to go get this data, right? So when we built Mint, and Mint doesn't work unless you go get financial transactions from banks. So what do? We go get the financial transactions from banks, right? Consented by the customer. And so when you think about data science, you have to think about it as the product. The data insight is a product, the same way that the UI is a product.
Yeah.
And if you need some data to go build the product, go get the data. Do it the right way, get it with the customer's consent to make sure that you're, with maintaining privacy and security and all that fun stuff. But go get the data. I mean, that's part of the reference before of, am I a product company?
Right.
Am I a platform company? Am I a data company? Yes. All those things.
Almost always a data company.
Yeah.
Can you guys remember the first time that some app wowed you and there was data science behind it? Like the first time you did something and you were like, how the hell did they know that this is
The first time.
Mm-hmm.
I think the advances in data science have been so gradual that we just sort of habituate to them, right? It's not like overnight we woke up and we have all the technology that we do now. It's been the sort of drip situation. So Google Images and stuff, now I can put in a word or something and get any image that has that object in it. So it's super easy. It gradually got better and better, and so we didn't wake up overnight with that. So I think in that case, it was sort of habituated to it. And I think where it sort of, it's the type of question that they're answering or what they're doing and how it affects you personally that is the ones that sort of stand out. Like with the ad prediction and stuff, when you were on this website 2 days ago when you were looking at this product and then now it's sitting there on this banner, like those are the things because it feels personal. So I think that's where it really sort of stands out for me. And I'm still not sure if my Alexa is listening to my
100%.
conversations and like telling, well, I know they're listening to the conversations, but I don't know if it's sort of manipulating the ads that I'm seeing because there are some coincidences that come there. So I
The
think
answer
it's
is
like,
yes.
Yes.
100%.
Here's something I want to say.
100%.
Here's something I want to say.
Yeah.
I had a verbal conversation with someone about the Impossible Burger,
Yep.
the genetically engineered vegetarian hamburger, and there was a shit ton of hamburger
Oh yeah.
videos on my YouTube front page. And I did not, maybe I did, but I don't think I did.
Yeah.
Give the Google god any clue that I was interested. I mean, I'm a omnivert.
Yeah.
I like that. Really? You have to tell me what that
computer
term means at
scientist,
some
right?
point.
Yeah.
Go to a previous episode.
Oh, okay.
What is the thing where you eat plants and you eat
Omnivore.
animals?
Omnivore.
Omnivert.
Close. Not quite. No, I had the same thing happen. So I was at some event and I was talking to the Cox Business guys. I've never seen an ad for Cox Business ever. We're having a conversation about this topic and then bring it up in the context of Cox Business, and literally the next day Facebook is all covered with Cox Business ads. Weirdest thing ever. So
I
strange.
hate that.
So strange.
So from the data science side, it could be a couple different ways they got that information, right? They could have had some sort of geo-based information that you were near this place, and so we're going to serve up information, or it could have been they heard the conversation, and so I think that sort of really kind of makes it one is less creepy. We're sort of used to the geo thing at this point, I think, but listening to what you're
But there
saying,
is a
I'm
theory-
going with the conversation
No,
because
but-
we were at like a random.
But I think
dinner
this is a
location.
very important point, because I think that this is what data science does. The correlation between the different seemingly independent data points that pinpoints exactly the thing that you did last night when really it was derived. I personally don't think that they're listening to us.
I don't know. I think they're listening to us.
This was sponsored by Facebook. Okay.
Right, yeah.
I will say the first time I had my magical moment with what I think was data science was Pandora.
Oh yeah.
Because I couldn't believe that I could put in one artist and then boom, 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 song after song. I think it got progressively worse. But back in the early days,
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. I mean, that to me was magic.
Yeah, I think for me, now that you bring that up, I'm not sure if there was actually data science involved. Maybe it was like early data science. But when I first bought my TiVo, and TiVo had the thumbs up, thumbs down feature with TV shows, and then it would recommend other TV shows. And I was surprised how accurate it was. And that was 15 years ago.
That is, I mean, that's kind of, I mean, the whole
Yeah.
correlating what you've done
Yeah.
to what others like you have done.
Yes.
Is that's, I mean, that at the core of
Yeah.
data science, right? Is, I mean,
I think that's one part of it. You know, the other interesting part of it is that, and so now you get into why is Facebook a social network, right? Because you get into data network theory, but there is a latent network behind data that actually of connections of people to other people and people to companies, and the data science's ability to actually instantiate that network, I think, is the big unmet thing in the world. Like, imagine if you're driving by your favorite ice cream place, and then we send a targeted ad to your phone for a 50-cent coupon for that ice cream place.
but that doesn't feel, I don't feel good about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's in terms of what we're doing with data. This is the trial and
If
error.
they know, for instance, that I love chocolate peanut butter explosion,
Yeah. Well, we know that
And-
from your transactions, right?
Right.
It would be on the transaction.
so they know I love chocolate peanut butter explosion,
Yeah.
And you get a coupon for that?
and I get a
Are you
coupon.
going to pull in?
Then
Dude,
then
if
it's
Your
I
okay.
heads-up
see
display,
that, I'm
the
gonna
heads-up
be like-
display in your car puts the ad up and
I-
says, turn left
I
now.
am in.
Free-
I am
chocolate
in.
explosion.
For
Yeah.
instance, last night my wife and I had protein style In-N-Out burgers.
Oh, it's the
By
best.
the way, it's amazing.
The best.
Yeah.
And I was thinking that if somehow they obviously they know I got that, they know probably if they correlate my card, my Visa card, to, because they don't have rewards or anything.
Yeah.
So if they match my Visa with that purchase, they could probably get more protein style burgers out of me.
It's possible. You know, the sad thing is I was actually, I don't remember the exact context, but I was chatting with a data science leader at Google, and he in fact was also saying that, and this is the business that Google is in, that it's almost a shame that we have so many amazingly smart people working in data science, and what they do is target ads at us.
Yeah, pretty much.
So sad.
And, you know, I believe that the potential of data science, we haven't even seen it yet in terms of the true impact it can have on our lives. I mean, most of what we see now is either ads or like ice cream. It's like fun things, right? Like the fact that I can go to Google Photos and it's done facial recognition on my dog. And so I could click on the face of my dog and it will show me all the photos in Google Photos that have my dog in it.
Is that the one you put up for adoption?
Never. Are you
It
kidding?
is amazing. I saw that the other day for the first time. I'm in the gallery
Yeah.
and it said, so my wife and I recently had a baby, and so we've taken a ton of baby pictures, and it has a category now. It's like babies, and just picked all those out, right?
Yeah.
Just random category like that. Okay, that's interesting.
So that's interesting. Does it really make my life better that I can find all the photos of my dog? No. But you can almost sense, you get this feeling, and certainly, I mean, I see what we're working on inside of Intuit, the impact that it actually will drive of making people's lives better, because it provides you personal insight that you normally only get if you go talk to an expert human being. I think that's when it will become truly mainstream, and it truly is butting heads with, you know, privacy, security, the governments are coming in, right? So it needs to be consent-based, it needs to be transparent, it needs to be under the control of the customer. It's not our data, it's the customer's data, right? But if they do consent, oh my goodness, the kind of insights and
I mean, if the ghost in the machine suddenly sends me a push notification saying there's someone 2 buildings down that you really need to meet around your AWS issues, I mean, I'm gonna be like, holy shit.
Yeah.
I'm gonna punch in. Then I mean, for me, it's that latent data network
Yeah.
that you talked about. I feel like we're all evolving to that sentient moment where the data tells us what to do, because without that data, we never would have even considered doing that.
Yeah.
And our lives are therefore better because
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah, I mean, imagine some of just like the simplest moments, right? Like if we could project your cash flow and we know you're about to default on your checking account.
I told you shouldn't tell people.
Sorry. I know someone who shall remain unnamed
I think
who's
he's
about
a
to
computer
default.
scientist.
And what
I
if,
don't know.
that's right, and he's a computer scientist. I won't say anything more. What if we automatically went and got you a bridge loan, put it into your bank account, and then you get paid, and then automatically pays it back, instead of you having to pay $100
Yeah.
penalty.
We
for
are
that.
absolutely. I
Like,
mean,
we're
we
in
have
the
to be
age of-
going to that.
Absolutely.
Like that, we could be doing that right now. I'm sure somebody could.
If you could just put it, instead of putting it in my bank,
Yeah.
put it under my pillow.
Right. Put it in your offshore bank. So here's one thing that's weird that I was thinking about, though. When everybody has access to the data, right, and we're all getting these same decisions, when it's personalized, it's good. But let's say I want to trade stocks, and I want the best stock portfolio. Okay, so there's some AI out there that's making that decision, and we're all now buying and selling the same stocks based on the same data at the same time. Well, like, what happens then?
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, that's the feeling you get when you're following Google Maps' directions, right? Or Waze,
Yeah.
when it says,
Yeah.
"Hey, take this detour."
Everybody-
Aren't you giving this to a million people?
Exactly. Yeah.
How is that helping me?
You actually see that,
Oh,
right? When on the
absolutely.
freeway,
Yeah.
the exit.
Just
It's crazy. Listen, we've had way too much fun. Chris, anything else that we need to know about this meetup? Is it open or closed? Invite only?
It's open. Yeah. We usually start so competitions usually last about 2 months, and then we'll have it open for about a month, the first month, for people to come in and start participating, and then after that we'll close it for a month.
I love
Because
it.
we'll switch to teams and then start competing. So
I love it.
yeah.
I work with a lot of junior engineers, and my biggest challenge there isn't to teach them or help them with their code. It's to build up their confidence around that taxonomy.
Yeah.
And I think that work that you're doing is insane.
Yeah.
So we'll post some contact details around that.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us,
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Alex, Robert.
Yeah, it's
Chris?
great to be
yeah.
here.
Thank you. It's great.
Cheers. Have you chatted with a CTO lately? Hi, thank you for listening to the CTO Studio. If you don't mind, take a quick second and please rate and review the show. It helps us a lot. Go to thectostudio.com for more information on what we're doing at 7 CTOs. We also have a video or two for you that could be a helpful resource for you as you're managing your company. So thank you for listening.